Goose. She likes the dog 'cause she's a goose. And she is a goose. She has a goose 'cause she's a goose. Goose, it's the fresh goose. She likes to turn about 'cause she's a goosey goose. It's the fresh goose, the fresh goose. Fresh Goose Podcast. Hello everybody, this is Carl Smith. I'm taping an intro for the Fresh Goose Arts podcast. Oh man, I wish I had a better name. I wish I had a good name for things. Naming things is the worst. Anyway, this episode is with Debbie Kizer. She is a organizer. She's an artist, and in Austin, Texas, she runs Imagine Art, which is very difficult to describe. It's basically a nonprofit that helps people with disabilities make art, and that has included me for years, and it's been really, really, really awesome. I could not make most of the paintings I make without Imagine Art. They've been incredibly helpful, giving advice to me how to be an artist. Materials, they help me with materials sometimes, and I'm extremely, extremely grateful for their help. And I wanted to do a podcast with Debbie, who runs Imagine Art. She is a tireless champion of helping other people, which is really, really cool. And I wish I had more of that in me. I wish I wanted to help people as much as she does. I watch her run around in circles helping people, and it's awesome. So, Debbie Kizer. See you guys later. Hey everyone, this is Carl Smith. I'm taping a quick ad spot for canvasland.net. I'm doing these spots every time I do a podcast. If I get one right, then I'll just pop them in over and over, but usually they're not. But anyway, canvasland.net is your source for the finest made artist painting supports, handmade with pride in Austin, Texas, with sustainable materials such as hemp canvas. And these are really good canvases. I've been painting on them, and hemp is a very fine material for painting on. It has a lot of grab, it has a lot of depth, and it pushes in a little, but it doesn't really stretch. Like canvas, you stretch out, and it kind of just keeps flopping. But hemp holds its place really well. Chuck Volter runs canvasland.net. He is a talented painter and a talented business person, and a very nice person to have in our fair city of Austin. And I'm stoked that he's here. I hope his company does the best. These are really great canvases. They're made really well. They're made more sturdy. Yes, they are made more sturdy than your basic canvases you get in many art supply stores. And I've talked about this a lot on Facebook, and I know that canvasland.net, the canvases aren't cheap. They're not super cheap. And, you know, sometimes you can't buy expensive things. I get that. We're artists. I understand. But every once in a while, if you've got some money, if you made a good sale, you had a good month, then splurge for yourself. Or if you get a commission and someone wants custom-sized canvases for their weird house, you can go to canvasland.net and request custom-sized canvases and get a quote from Chuck Volter about the prices for those, for shipping and everything, and then give those to the person paying you for the commission. Tell them how much it is for these nice canvases, and it's worth it. If they care about art, if they care about what they're buying, they're going to put in a little bit more extra money to make sure that's built right. So canvasland.net, Chuck Volter, check it out.
Slick to it.
It does?
The front of it, like the top of it. You see that? It's like vintage style, the silver, kind of like the, the diner.
I
Vintage,
guess.
50s.
Art Deco microphone.
Yeah.
Zoom recorder. So, thank you for coming. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, this is awesome. I'm really excited to get you here and talk to you about everything you do, which is a lot.
It is a lot. Today it felt like a lot. I was just like, breathing.
Every day
It's
it's got to be,
It
right?
my every day is kind of a lot, yeah.
So I don't really know where to start. I feel like we don't really know like that much about you personally. It would be great to do some of that and then talk about all the other stuff you do, especially Imagine Art, of which I've been a part of. But let's just kind of start with where you're from and stuff, how you ended up in Austin.
Okay, well, so I was originally born in Houston.
Oh,
I got out of there as quickly as I could, which was after graduating from high school. I hated Houston. I thought I actually had to move out of the state. I thought it was the whole state that I hated. But when I
Really?
got out of Houston, I went to Sam Houston State University, and I fell in love with Texas at that point. And so I realized I didn't need to leave Texas. I just needed to get the heck out of Houston.
so where is that? Sam Houston?
Sam Houston is in Huntsville.
Okay.
So, which is strange because I moved from this huge metropolitan to the middle of nowhere where I was surrounded by state prisons. You know, there's
Right,
5
right.
state prisons in Huntsville. So.
That's right.
But it's a beautiful piney woods, and that's where I fell in love with camping and rivers and artist. So it's a big art school.
Yeah.
I didn't go there for art. I went there for psychology. And, you know, I probably would not have gone to college had it not been for, I was living alone the last 2 years of my high school experience because both my parents left the city of Houston, and I stayed there, and I ended up, there was kind of no option. You know, if you want us to help you pay for your apartment, you're going to go to college. And so I did. My grades were pretty bad. I was a pretty bad student. I was living with a pretty serious drug addiction at that time that had started in college. You know, anytime you leave your kid in the city, you know, it's
Houston.
not a good idea.
Yeah, so I'm not supposed to ask you this, but when were you born?
I was born in 1967.
Okay.
Yeah, so I graduated in 1985 from high school and in 1989 from college. And,
So it wasn't really getting too bad in Houston yet, but it was
I
starting
went to
to...
Memorial, which was just a lot of rich young people. I mean,
Sure.
they were driving Porsches and stuff like that. So there was a lot of heavy drugs.
Really?
Yeah, and then I had my own apartment. I was the only kid in high school that had their own apartment. So, you know, that doesn't do the math on that. It's not going to turn out.
And there was no art, making art at all?
No, there was no making art at all. I don't even remember taking art classes or anything in high school. But when I went to college, I was surrounded by artists, and I lived in this really cool housing situation that was just kind of a collection of various houses in a neighborhood. And it happened that artists were just surrounding me. And so we hung out a lot, and I just kind of vicariously fell in love with art through them. I did take a couple of drawing classes, but I never considered myself, and I was, you know, to be an artist, and I was always just sort of on the peripheral with other artists, supporting other artists. I would life model for life drawing classes, things like that. When I came into Austin, originally when I started Imagine Art, I really didn't consider myself an artist. I was really passionate about art and wanted to be around artists and art because it made me happy, and it was like just a place of joy for me. So I found a way to support other artists, and through that process I ended up learning how to paint. And so now I most definitely consider myself an artist. I've been painting and creating for close to 20 years, and I exhibit and I sell my work, and you know, it's a strong part of my life. I mean, painting is, you know, I've produced probably 15 paintings since Christmas.
Wow.
And so I'm pretty active with it now.
These are like big paintings.
Yeah, they're big, beautiful paintings. I mean, my style just changes so dramatically every couple of years. You know, I'll just go into this huge shift where my technique's improved, you know, everything about what I'm doing just has this shift. So.
Yeah. So did you get a BFA in psychology?
I got a bachelor's of science.
Okay. And did you come to Austin right after that, or?
Yeah, pretty much. I scouted around for where I was going to work, and then I ended up getting a job in a neuro rehab here in 1989. And I did that for 4 years.
So what was that state hospital? Where was
No, it was the Healthcare Rehab Center, Ditmar, and I worked in head injury rehab in the acute division, and it was pretty intense, but that is where I fell in love with people with disabilities. And it was a strange season of my life because I was a really broken individual. Like, I was still actively using drugs, and
in Austin?
Yeah, when I came to Austin, actively drinking, heavily drinking, and I I really, my relationships were pretty broken and dysfunctional, and I just fell in love with the people that I worked with, the people that had disabilities, and most of them could not carry out a conversation. I mean, some of them were in vegetative states or comatose states, and but I had active, deep relationships with the people that I worked with, and I was able to be me, like find out who I was, because I didn't have to put on these pretenses to be with people anymore.
Right.
And that was, it was powerful in my life, because it really helped me kind of take off this shell. And I realized like how uncomfortable I was in the world, with people just constantly feeling like they were judging me, or like I was this oddball, or that I just wasn't going to fit in because I wasn't perfect enough.
Right.
That was kind of the way I looked at myself. And so being with these individuals that relied on me to feed them from a tube, in some cases, it changed my life. And it really, I discovered what being me was like.
Yeah.
And so, it was interesting.
It is healing. Helping other people just helps you so much.
Yeah.
It's hard to communicate that to people.
Well, and I discovered that people with disabilities are so authentic, like particularly people that have profound disabilities, that are physically disabled.
Yeah.
They've, been their whole life with people staring at them or making fun of them throughout their childhoods and school years and all of that. And they, many of them have discovered a way of just being really authentic and really straightforward about life.
Yeah, they have to think creatively to get through their life and to deal with people.
Right.
And I think people kind of expect them to have a unique perspective because they have which is kind of unfair. But often they do have to think creatively about how they're going to survive, as opposed to people that don't have to think about that.
Yeah, and I think there's more, there's just a kind of a call for them more so to just really accept who they are.
Right.
Accept their limitations, accept the way that people look at them or judge them, accept their imperfections. And so I've learned a lot from that community of people, and as a result of that, I just never wanted to work apart from that. So my whole life work ever since that time has been built around people with disabilities.
Okay. So was religion a part of your life as a kid, or was that later?
No.
Your parents weren't?
No. So Imagine Art is a ministry now, but no, it wasn't. I didn't become a Christian. Even when I started Imagine Art, I wasn't a Christian.
So it's 97.
Yeah, I started in 97, and really Imagine Art came out of a really just devastating period in my own life where, I describe it as kind of my face on the floor situation, and where I just wasn't functioning. I mean, I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder in 97.
Okay.
I was actively a drug addict in 97 and trying to get sober. I had quit my job. At that point, I was working as an employment consultant for people with disabilities and helping people move out of institutions and start small businesses and find employment. And I just wasn't functioning because of the addiction, and it was a combination of my life experiences were falling apart, my marriage was really challenged, and then I was using drugs, and I had started taking psychotropic medications on top of that, and just the combination was just a train wreck, basically. And I ended up being diagnosed and just really struggling to function. So I quit my job, and then that's when I started Imagine Art, because I couldn't figure out what I was going to do with myself, and so I utilized person-centered planning method, which is what I did when I worked with people with disabilities. Because many of them, like, you couldn't figure out what kind of job in the world are you going to do.
Yeah.
You can only move your head, or
and you
can't
can make
speak.
art,
Yeah.
maybe.
Right. So I used the same methodology for myself on what I was going to do. And I really, at that point, I recognized that I loved art. That was kind of my happy place.
Yeah.
And, but I wanted to go into the arts, and then I looked in the arts, and I didn't see any people with disabilities there.
Yeah.
And I could not fathom myself being in a community without people with disabilities. It just scared the heck out of me.
So you mean like the Austin art world of the 90s?
Yeah.
Okay.
So this was 20 years ago.
Sure.
And so what I did basically was I created a project where I could take 10 people with me into the arts. And so I got a little mini grant, and I took 10 artists that had head injuries into the community, and I would buy them art class at Laguna Gloria, Laughing at the Sun, Dougherty Arts, ACC.
Wow.
I would pay for art classes through this little grant that I got from the city and from the Austin Community Foundation. And then I went with them as their aide. I helped them go to the bathroom. I helped them eat a taco before class. I helped them set up their paint palettes.
Yeah.
I helped the teacher learn how to work with them.
Yeah.
And as a result of it, I learned how to paint. And I had talked to the teachers early on and said, well, if you let me paint alongside of them in the class, it'll be more natural. It'll be more organic, and they won't seem like such a, separate piece from the class because they have this third person here helping them. And the teachers fell for that, so to speak, and so I learned how to paint, which is great.
Yeah, that sounds like that sounds like my worst nightmare, trying to paint, and worry about any other thing besides. I have like issues with anxiety is kind of my I guess it's a disability. Yeah, so
well, the whole experience was healing for me.
Absolutely.
Because I was a real disaster, and I talk about it now as if it was like a carrot at the end of a stick for a horse, where the whole taking people into the arts and being in that place, because I think I was able to not focus on me but on them.
Yeah.
And so I was more worried about them functioning in the community and less obsessed with what was happening in my brain or what people were thinking about me.
And the work never ends.
Right.
I see you in, I imagine art, where it is now. I see you in there every week, just doing that, helping people go to the bathroom and helping them eat, and it's intense. It's really intense. And
I love it though. It totally drives me.
It's not for everybody though.
Yeah.
Like not everyone is in that position.
Right.
But was it housed anywhere, Imagine Art?
We've been all over the place. I mean, we started, from my house, and I went into the community. Then we got a workshop space at Mary Lee Foundation on Lamar Square. We did monthly events there, brought in lots of community artists engaged with us at that point to lead workshops. Then our numbers grew from like 10 to 16 to 35 to 45, and so we had to start operating differently. So we bartered with the Self-Help Advocacy Center on South 1st Street to have space there. And so they offered us a good section of their building. We opened our first gallery. We started having regular shows, like 85 people would come. We'd do solo exhibitions for artists. We had a studio space there. But as a result of that season, all these people with mental illness came into our community. So we started with people with head injuries, and then boom, it just like combusted into, at one point we had 195 artists registered, most of whom had mental illness. Yeah. And that was when we transitioned into being a ministry.
Okay.
I had already become a Christian, within the first year of Imagine Art. And so that was in 97. But in 2001, we established as a ministry when we filed our 501c3 with the IRS. Okay. And our reasoning behind that was really in response to these people with mental illness that we were serving, because their needs were so intense. And I did not know how in the world I was going to serve their needs. It was really overwhelming for me. Yeah. We had people that were, suicide was a conversation weekly. And we had people that were cutting on themselves and things like that. And yet we had this amazing, strong community where people were coming every day. And I realized the responsibility of it, and I knew that I needed something beyond myself to carry this thing. And I needed just the power of prayer, and I needed a strong Christian community around me, a board. I needed help from churches and things like that. Yeah. So that's kind of what prompted that decision.
And did that change how Imagine Art functioned at all?
Well, not really. I mean, in 2001, after I made that decision, I was a pretty new Christian. And so the day I made that decision, it was like a bombshell. I lost board members. I lost funding sources. So it was a little bit of a shell shock to me. And, there was a lot of people that were really threatened by that decision to be a ministry. Right. And so I think it really scared me, like kind of the people's response to it. And so I just kind of filed that paper in the file drawer, and I shut the door, and
Keep going.
yeah, I just kind of kept going. I mean, we did build a Christian board, but nothing really changed until, I guess it was 2007. So it was probably 5 years later. And it was 2006 because I was pregnant. And so I decided to step down from the executive director position while I had my baby, and I brought in a new executive director, and he was this really strong Christian. His name is David Gaddy.
Okay.
And he just transformed the agency. He rebranded us, he redid our mission, and I trusted him so much. It was just amazing to be able to partner with somebody like that on an organization that you kind of gave birth to. It's kind of like giving somebody your child to raise in their teenage years, but he did an amazing work for us, and he just came in with so much enthusiasm, and he just captured us in the story of what God was doing at Imagine Art, and we all just jumped on the train that he was driving and rode that baby for a few years, and as a result of it, it really changed who we were, and we were able to then come out the end of it really being identified as a ministry and knowing what that meant for us. And
what does that mean exactly?
Well, it means for us that we are called to work with a specific people group, that we believe that the Lord has called us to work with these people that have disabilities that are artists.
Okay.
And that the whole reason that we're doing it really is for God. So we're doing it for His glory, because we recognize that there's these treasures in the community, that these people with disabilities are often, it's like when you unearth a treasure, before that, it doesn't look like a treasure. You can't really see what's going on, but you uncover it, you clean it up, so we're uncovering and unearthing these treasures in these artists that have disabilities. And as we're doing that, we recognize that God is glorified, because these people are walking in restoration. They're coming out of isolation, aloneness, poverty. They're coming into family and relationship and community. They're making money. They're establishing small businesses when maybe they've never even had a job before.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of restoration, and then we're pointing to God to say this is a reflection of who He is.
Okay.
Because He believes that these people with disabilities are VIPs in the kingdom, that they are, that they're amazing treasures, that they're not people that should be neglected or forgotten or be in poverty or oppressed.
And the people that help them also should
be
treasured, which is hard. I mean, I see you guys not really getting the attention maybe that you deserve for the work you do. I mean, and that community is broken, the mental illness across the country, across the world. It's very difficult to be in that place especially if you're poor, if you're in the state hospital.
Yeah.
That's not a safe place, I think.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, it continues to be devastating the way that people with disabilities are treated in our country, and the state institutions, and I mean, just the whole system of medications and everything. It's a disaster.
It's expensive, and it requires a lot of research, and scientists are just sort of lost about what to do.
Yeah, well, and a lot of times the medications are just killing people.
Right.
And they're just compounding problems that need more medications, and it's a big mess.
Yeah. So, and Austin seems to be a really big hub for nonprofits. There's a big arts community here, but I don't see a lot of for-profits that have much of a future. I see a lot of galleries closing, but I see like women in their work, big medium nonprofit entities. They tend to last a really long time, which is really cool.
Well, the city does an amazing job at supporting the nonprofit artists and arts organizations here.
Yeah, there's a lot of
grants. We would not exist without the City of Austin Cultural Arts.
Yeah, do you do like TCA grants or
We do.
grants?
TCA grants are little, for the most part, they're small. They're $3,000 to $5,000 grants for little mini projects.
So are you writing, I guess I'll go back to when you started getting grants. Are you writing the grants for these? Are you figuring out how to do it?
I do, yeah. I'm the grant writer. We've yet to be able to afford a grant writer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And find someone that'll just do that. It's such hard work.
It is.
It's very difficult. And you really need someone, I mean, with what you're doing everything. Like you're the executive director of Imagine Art.
Yeah.
which houses, we'll get into all of that, which is a bunch of different stuff. But yeah, that is a tough world. I've tried to write grants for art stuff, and it's another job for sure.
Most of our money doesn't come from grants. So unfortunately, I mean, grants are hard work, and they're hard work to focus on doing that programming instead of being more organic about what you need to be doing that day, or allowing programming to shift and develop. Grants kind of hold you to a pattern. And then reporting, it is work to track and report and document. But most of our money comes from earned revenue sources. When we brought in that executive director in 2007, it was because our income increased dramatically because we held a lottery license. We applied and received a lottery license and began to be an owner of Big Star Bingo, which is on 183 in Anderson Lane.
Yeah.
And so the revenue source, when we first started that, was about $40,000 a year, unrestricted revenue. And it went up at some points. It was $160,000 a year. Now it averages about $120,000. So you never really know what it's going to be based on the economy.
Right.
But we also have a bunch of contracts with state and county and city organizations for disability-related dollars. And so when a person with a more profound disability is in the community, there's dollars connected with their care.
Right.
And so there's dollars that we access for community support and vocational training and things like that.
Wow. That
can help us so that we make sure we have attendance on staff to supervise. Because a lot of the folks that come, I would say maybe 15% of the artists that come to Imagine Art, they have to be supervised, and they may need assistance making a plate of food, or they're not going to be able to leave the building and go to the store. And so we have to make sure that when their family member or the institution where they live drops them off with us, that we're going to be responsible for them.
Yeah, and that is, that you guys maybe have 3 people on staff.
Right.
For how many artists a day are you?
Yeah, we probably have up to 25 people a day that come, but a lot of, again, 15% maybe really need that help, and we heavily rely on the community of artists that we serve to serve us.
I see.
And so people help with lunch. We provide meals over there, so people help with lunch, and people sit with our artists. Like, we have one artist that we literally have to watch him all the time, because if he gets up and moves across the room, chances of him falling down, and he's pretty stubborn.
Sure.
And we want, so we assign somebody to sit with him.
Yeah.
And they can do their art right next to him or play dominoes with him. He usually plays dominoes while making art. And so we try our best to accommodate people like that. And I think that's one of the strengths that Imagine Art is, that the community rallies together so that a person like this individual, Donald, can be a part of our community.
Right.
Most people, most art services would say, if you need help going to the bathroom, or if you need, it's like, no, you can't come here, because we don't offer that kind of a service.
We don't want to be responsible, or if something happens.
Right, but for me,
risk.
I just, I see Donald as an artist,
right,
and I want to accommodate Donald, even if it costs me something to do it.
Yeah.
Because I know if Donald's not there with us, he's going to be somewhere else.
Yeah, and that's the problem. People with disabilities, often when they get out, they end up alone. They end up feeling depressed, and you do kind of have to help them out into the world. And to make art, they don't have money to go buy art supplies, so the facilities. So you're doing
Yeah, we provide facilities. We have a 10,000 square foot warehouse, basically, that is an arts hub.
In East Austin.
Yeah, it's off of MLK near Airport. We're on Real Street. And we provide all the art materials that the artists use, and we have art directors that work in the space with them. There's 3 people that function as art directors, and so I wear one of those hats.
Yeah.
And then Lacey Richter, and then Tony is our constant, he's there 4 days a week in that position.
Okay.
And we have a lot of volunteers. We also have 6 resident artists on staff with us, or we barter space with them, so they have a 1,500 square foot portion of our warehouse that they use for their studio space. And in exchange for that, they serve us in the studio. They serve mentoring the artists. They do classes and things like that for us.
Okay, and that's part of Imagine Art. Mm-hmm. And do they exhibit art? Are they painting in the
In their 1,500 square foot space, it's kind of a separated space from our main area. That's their studio and gallery, and it's they're a collective, so they kind of do whatever they want. They're not as organized as as they maybe could be yet, but it's a new organization like that. The Residences, we launched it in January, and they've had one exhibition so far, and there's 6 of them. We have room for 20, so we're actually recruiting. We don't actively go out and recruit and advertise, but we're always on the lookout, and what we feel works better for us is when somebody comes into our community and then their experience is, wow, this is amazing, I want to be here, what can I do?
Yeah.
And then from that, we give people options for volunteering or being a resident artist or signing on as a registered artist if they have a disability.
Yeah.
But the residents that are with us, we're expecting quite a bit from them. So we're asking them to work in the studio space on their own work for like 20 hours a week. And then we're expecting at least a 6-hour block of time a week that they would give us back.
Yeah.
And so we are working with them on a one-on-one basis to do something that they're passionate about. So if somebody's passionate about clay, we're helping them launch a clay class or an open studio that they facilitate in clay.
Yeah.
Or drawing. We'll partner them with one of our registered artists to co-teach a class. So this summer we're launching the Artist Way. We're launching Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain. We're launching some new clay classes. We're launching a clay camp for kids. We're going to be launching some prophetic art classes, which are basically a fancy word for talking about receiving visions from the Lord or from God and producing that on a piece of artwork.
Okay.
So we're going to be doing a bunch of different things that are going to reach out to the community and open our doors for more community members to come in and see what we're doing.
That sounds incredibly tough. A lot of the artists I know are somewhat selfish, and like making their art is really difficult, and asking them to do much outside of that it seems like it's pulling teeth sometimes. Artists are so strapped for trying to get their work made to have an art career, which is, how the hell do I do that? And so
we figure the value of their studio space.
Yeah.
I mean, even if we're saying it's really cheap, that it's maybe $250 or $300 a month.
Super cheap, yeah.
I mean, we figure it's better for them to barter it, doing something that can be a resume builder for them, like teaching a class, versus working at Thundercloud or having to work an additional 5 or 10 hours at their job. And then
Thundercloud.
They're not enough. I love Thundercloud. I'm sorry. Did I
No,
say
no.
that? Oh my God.
It's Austin business. I love it.
Well, and actually, I eat there like 3 times a month, so I love Thundercloud. But I think that some artists have to do jobs outside of to support their art. I mean, just to buy a canvas, just to pay for a studio space, to exhibit, to buy your frames and all of that is very expensive for an artist.
And getting an artist to understand that being engaged in something else besides their art making is important, and it does inform their art practice. And if they're teaching a class, they're going to learn a lot about who they are as an artist. And
absolutely,
it is a resume builder. But getting them in the door, like and even for me as an artist, like I really want to try to show somewhere and sell art, And I feel like if those parts aren't in place, it's really hard to commit to other stuff. But it is beneficial. It does help. And
I think it makes you well-rounded as an artist.
As a person,
if you're giving back, if you're volunteering your time as an artist, if you're serving on a board or you're serving an organization to help hang an exhibition or something like that, as well as thinking about other ways you can make income besides just selling your paintings, like through teaching or doing residencies. I think that it's a great way to get your name out there and to expand your horizons artistically, and you will learn. I mean, working with different populations to do art, you're gonna pick up some stuff from that.
Yeah, and the disabled, I find a lot of really great art. I mean, I feel like that people in that community will often have a disability income coming in, and they do kind of have this time to make art and think about, like what you're saying, think about who they are, think about what their disability is, and think about what they want to say. And a lot of working class people I know don't even really consider that. They're working 2 jobs, and they would maybe like to make art, but and that's just the situation. But
yeah, it's interesting because you have a couple of different types of people at Imagine Art. I mean, you have the folks that have more profound disabilities and developmental disabilities or multiple disabilities, and they could, I don't know, it's interesting, like they're just making art all the time, period. They're not thinking about it. They're not planning for it. They are just doing it.
Yeah.
And it's really, it's just something that they're sort of doing. They're obsessed on it. And then you have folks that have mental illness, and even though they have an entire day where many of them are not working, a lot of times they're not functioning at the same level as the person that's multiply disabled, and so they're not able to make art as much, they're not as productive in it, even though they have access to the same resources. And we find that mental illness, it's a real challenge to serve the population of an artist that has a mental illness.
Oh yeah. Well, what I am finding within Austin, there's a lot of pretty cool art things happening, but the Imagine Art group shows are very, very unique for that reason. Like the most unique, and the biggest mix of like amazingly good art, but also art that's made by, like you're saying, someone with multiple disabilities, where you're just like, I don't know what that is or who made it, but it's a diverse, very diverse community. 65 people, I think.
Yeah.
So what percentage would you say is like multiple and sort of higher functioning?
Well, we probably have, it's hard to say. I said 15% people that maybe have developmental disabilities, and that's probably about right. But people, we have people with multiple disabilities. Like we have one artist that's deaf and blind and autistic.
Yeah.
And he's actually a really big seller. Like he produces stuff that's really strong, and he sells every time we have an exhibition, he'll sell something.
Uh-huh.
And but the artists that fall under that multiply disabled category is probably 5%.
Oh, okay.
And then the folks that have mental illness, it's probably over 50%, I would say.
Yeah, and I'm definitely I came to Imagine Art probably 2 years ago, and I'm in that camp where I have PTSD. I don't really, I have a disability where I can, get around and do stuff, but I can tell you I would not be making art without you guys. You guys are
sweet.
like supplying materials and space, and I've exhibited there, like in my first solo show was at Imagine Art, so like I don't know where I would have done that. So
Yay.
Thank
you. Well, it's a healthy community too. I know you have a
healthiest,
lot of friends there.
Yeah.
And you hang out there. We have a men's night on Tuesday, and so you go have dinner and hang out. And
yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
And it's great for meeting homeless people that I would never meet.
yeah, it's an extremely diverse
Yeah.
space. Like if you ever want to get out of your comfort zone, you can spend a day with somebody that's, pretty well to do, and there you might be sitting at a table with somebody that's homeless or somebody that's blind and autistic.
And then making art with them and talking about, that's the most, like I said, the most diverse thing I can think of in Austin.
Yeah, our homeless population's probably 2%. We've served kind of this chronically homeless group of artists for a long time. They've been homeless for 15, 16 years.
Wow.
And we don't really help them try not to be homeless.
Right.
That's not what we do. There's been seasons where we've made some attempts to help them secure housing and stuff, but we recognize that for many of them, they're where they want to be.
Sure. But if it was like a regular art gallery in Austin, a security call would be made.
Right.
Who are these? They're eating food and they look kind of,
Yeah, we feed our artists before we have openings. We usually have like a full meal for the artists before we have openings, just so that they don't, crowd on the table and eat everything before the guests come.
Yeah. So imagineart.net, that's the main website. Do you want to talk about Renew East a little bit?
Yeah, I think Renew East is confusing to people. A year ago, we took on the lease of the building that we've been in for 5 years.
Oh, 5 years, yeah.
Yeah, so we've been in that building for a while, since 2010, but we were just a tenant of that building. And then a year ago, we had an opportunity to figure out if we wanted to move or if we wanted to take the lease, because main partners were leaving. Okay. And so we just bit the bullet, so to speak, and stepped into this massive undertaking of this 10,000 square foot building. Yeah. And it's been over a year now, a year and a half since we've done it. And we called the building Renew East. I think, the building had a name before. It was called the Seabrook Center. Okay. And that was what everybody called it. I'll meet you at the Seabrook Center. And so when they left, we just thought, well, we have to rename the building. We want to do something new. Mm-hmm. And so we decided to call it Renew East. Mm-hmm. And, I think it has confused people, like the difference between Imagine Art and Renew East and what's what. But basically, Renew East is a building. Okay. And it's a place where Imagine Art operates. It's a place where Imagine Art's community gathers to be and create and exhibit. But it's also a place where a lot of other things happen. Mm-hmm. So tonight, there's a church group meeting there for their quarterly worship service. It's the Austin Stone Community Church is going to gather there at 7 p.m. Tomorrow night, Gateway Singles Group is going to gather there for an hour or two. On Thursday night, we had rented out the back gallery, and Chula League is going to show Big Artists, Little Artists exhibition. There's going to be 80 works of art from kids around the city. And then on Saturday night, we rented another one of our galleries. We have 3 separate galleries in the space. Mm-hmm. And Louis Helson and his wife Olivia and their 2 children, Caroline and Mary Louise, are going to have a show that they've called Hallison's House of Wonders. Okay. And they're going to have their opening on Monday night or on Saturday at 7.
Is that like paintings or?
Yeah, they're going to have paintings and glass and drawings. It's a bunch of different things that they're going to be exhibiting. Wow. And then Monday night, we're having a prophecy night where people can come in and get plugged into teams of people that are going to speak prophetic words over them. Uh-huh. So that's just sort of out there, and that's 3 different organizations that are partnering to put on that event on Monday night at 7. And I've had people approach me scheduling weddings for the fall, and so we're trying to step out there to do some event rental. Yeah. And then we have our gallery as well there, so we do receptions. We also have a garden. We eat there, so we have 7 meals a week that we cook. So a lot happens in Renew East, and it's not just about the Imagine Art community. Uh-huh. And we're trying to expand more and more and create more of a place where it's going to be a happening in the city where people can come, hang out, grab a meal, get something from the garden. We have a food truck, Goodies and Bits, that's soul food barbecue. That's going to be on a Friday and Saturday night in our community. In the fall, we're launching a s'mores business in our garden. We're doing a big fire pit out there. Okay. And we're going to have a s'mores kind of community gathering every Thursday and Friday night. Okay. So yeah.
So mark all that down.
Yeah, mark all that down. We do have another website called reneweast.com. Yeah. And Renew East is really right now completely focused on recruiting artists for the residency. Okay. And so on the Renew East site, you'll find all the details about renting the gallery or being a resident. There's like frequently asked questions page on there. There's a contact form. There's photos of the space you can check out. Yeah. So that's really what we are going to be transitioning the Renew East website to be more encompassing for venue rental and marketing events, marketing what the churches are doing there.
Good. Yeah, that's a lot. But the Imagine Art group shows, do those happen 4 or 5 times a year?
Yeah, if you don't count the East Austin Studio Tour and our Christmas show, I think we've got 4 a year. It's pretty much every 2 months we'll put up a show. But what I'm trying to do now is in between our shows coming up and going down to try to pull in a rental to where we can either do a solo exhibition like we did for you or like we're doing for Louis Helson, or we can rent it out to the community. We are definitely looking for ways to utilize the facility and bring in earned income.
Sure. Yeah. It's tough. I find, I mean, I go to church, I'm a Christian. I find the religion thing really tough. I hate bringing it up amongst artists in Austin. It seems to be, like you're saying, people run sometimes. Do you have issues with that, Imagine Art? Do you have a strategy for how to deal with those questions when they come at you? Because I do know artists there that have absolutely zero interest, and my interest, wanes, comes and goes. And at the end of the day, it kind of doesn't matter that much if you're helping people. But I would like to have something I don't know. You must get this problem at some point.
Every once in a while, people will have a barrier about, okay, well, what does this mean for me? If you're a ministry, how am I supposed to connect with that? But for the most part, it's not that we don't advertise it. It's actually on every page of our website at the header. It talks about our mission statement. And so people know about it. Uh-huh. But sometimes I'll forget, like when I'm interviewing artists, I'll forget until the very end, and I'll say, oh, did you know we're a ministry? And I'll talk about that, about what that means and why we are that. And again, going back to that place where we've called, and it's just something that, this is why we're here. This is why we're doing what we're doing. Yeah. And so just having it be that simple, and I usually say, we're not an evangelistic organization. We are not trying to push you to believe anything. Right. And so really, you can know why we're doing what we're doing, because we don't want to hide what we're doing. Right. And we want you to know who we are, too, because our staff are Christians and our board is Christians. Uh-huh. And so the artists that we work with, some of them have pretty profound problems week to week to week. And if they come to us for help outside of an artistic problem, like a housing problem, a drug addiction problem, a boyfriend problem, or whatever, I mean, because of who we are, that is it. There's a way that we operate in problem solving, because of who we are as Christians. Mm-hmm. And so we let people know that, and people can choose that. It's not like a part of our services where we offer peer counseling and all this kind of stuff. It's very informal and very organic, but it is who we are. But what we find is that people come into the community and they are so wowed, I guess, by the beauty of it, the community aspect of how welcoming people are, how friendly people are, how encouraging, how loving, how peaceful. I mean, those are the things that we hear on a regular basis. Yeah, yeah. And one of the things that's really funny that just sort of keeps me aware of people's perceptions is we very often get referrals from community court. Oh. And so the downtown community court, when somebody gets, a PI, a DWI, a possession, or a gang-related arrest or whatever, they have an option to do community support or community service, and they'll get sent to us. They'll select us off a list because of the art piece of it, and they're interested. And
they think it might be easy.
Well, no, they're artists. Like usually when they come, if you interview them and you dig around there, you'll find out that they were an artist or they are an artist. Mm-hmm. But what happens, and we've seen this again and again and again, people will come and do their 20 hours or their 35 hours, and then they just keep coming back. They don't go away. And we've had people that have served for 1.5 years. Wow. And they're not Christians. Yeah, yeah. So they're coming in, and one of the things that we'll hear is, what is this? And why is it so peaceful here? And I just love this place.
Yeah, it's awesome.
And for us, the answer is just really simple. It's the presence of God. That's what God's presence is like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wow. That's a lot.
So we feel like we don't need to say anything.
Right. Yeah, I guess so. I guess that's right. My thing as an artist is trying to bring in, both camps, bring in people that are atheists and not turn them away with that information. And I'm having a lot of trouble with it because that world's pretty big. And within Austin, a lot of artists just don't even, it's not even something that's on their radar.
Well, we have people that are atheists or people that are Jewish. Yeah. We have people that are different,
Yeah.
Or just have had a lot of really bad experiences with religion too. Mm-hmm. That have been hurt.
Yeah. And Imagine Art, they just can come there and figure it out and have time to do that. But I'm trying to think of what else. Is there anything else about Imagine Art you want to cover? Or I know you got a lot of retreats. There's a lot of stuff. You went through some of the events that happens. But
Yeah, we do some really, I mean, we do an annual retreat that's a 4-day retreat, and that is actually the only time that we really connect spiritually with the artists. It's called the Art and Spirit Retreat. It's 4 days, and I teach during that retreat, which is the only time that I really take as an opportunity to teach the community. And so that's a good time for us to talk about who God is and what does that mean to you in your life, and then it's just a community builder because there's lots of fishing and boating and food, and we do art. We set up a studio in Gonzales for 4 days.
Wow.
And, we'll do other things too, field trips, and we're doing a men's challenge course, rope course thing for 2 days in Gonzales that we have a family foundation that has been supporting us for the last 3 years, the RVM BGM Family Fund. Their sons, Robert and Ben, were both disabled. Robert died, and they created a family fund to support camps or retreats for people with disabilities, and so we partner with them.
Okay.
And so they're sponsoring a men's challenge course that we're getting ready to do in May. So yeah, we're pretty organic. We can kind of do whatever we want.
Yeah.
And I love that about Imagine Art. It's like every year we never start off the beginning of the year knowing exactly what we're going to do, and so we're not stuck in a box. And if somebody comes to us and says, wow, what do you want to do this? Could we move in this direction? If it makes sense for us, sure, yeah. We don't have to say, oh, you have to wait till next fiscal year because we've already got the year planned out. We're just not like that. We're very much just sort of moving by the seat of our pants, but, in an organized fashion where we're able to get it done and be professional and effective.
So the future plans for Imagine Art are pretty open. Could be anything.
They are. I mean, we have kind of a vision in mind. We actually want to grow to be a residential facility. Ideally, we would have, 12 to 20 acres of land that had housing in it. This has been a conversation we've been having since 2010 with various people, and
that's a lot of land to
yeah.
to
we really want to be able to grow.
Yeah.
We want to be able to offer some foster care situations for adults that need to live within families. We have an aging population of people that have cognitive disabilities or developmental disabilities. They still live with their families, but their families are aging. And we really want to protect the relationships with them. And so our goal is to ultimately live with them and either be their guardians or foster them or have a group home or something where we can provide living support to them.
And so Imagine Art would move. It would be
the
whole thing.
I think we would move the whole thing. We're on a lease right now until 2017, and so ideally we would move the whole thing and we would own it.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
I'm glad you said that. I'm really... We've both been in Austin a long time. You've never lived anywhere else except for Houston, I guess, right?
Well, in Huntsville, yeah.
In Huntsville. That doesn't count. I'm just kidding. That's not a suburb of Houston. It's like hours away.
Oh, yeah.
Right? It's
yeah.
okay. So Austin has been changing in very, very strange ways, especially the last couple of years. There's like a 58-story condo going up downtown and stuff.
Yeah.
Is this making... Are you noticing it? Is it like changing the population?
Oh, absolutely.
Is it going to get harder to do what you do here?
It's not going to be harder to do what I do here, I don't think.
With Imagine Art.
The city is very art friendly.
Yeah.
And I mean, art is woven into every city plan and the 30-year plan. And I mean, that the city is very pro arts, recognizing that it's a attraction for businesses, and so thank God for the City of Austin Cultural Arts Division,
and it's unique,
and the
within
Economic
Texas.
Growth Division, and Kevin Johns and all the amazing people that work over there, Janet Siebert. I mean, they are actively engaging the city to develop arts districts and spaces and places. So, and they're putting a lot of money towards it, millions.
Yeah.
And so my hope is that will continue to thrive in our city. But we're looking at land that would be East MLK 969, but still on a bus route, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
The other thing that's kind of on the horizons is the Austin State Supported Living Center.
Okay.
That is caught the community's attention, my attention. It's an institution that's been in existence in Austin for 100 years. It's 100 acres of land off of 35th Street in Mopac.
Oh.
And it's a state institution for the disabled, the people that are multiply, have cognitive disabilities, and, IQs under, say, 60. People that live there. Some people have lived there for 40 years.
Wow.
Donald, who's the individual I mentioned earlier that plays dominoes and needs a lot of support in our community, he lived at the State Supported Living Center for 60 years.
60.
He moved in there when he was 6 years old,
Wow.
which when Donald was a kid, that was not uncommon. Families just didn't know how to support people with disabilities, and professionals would tell them, you can't.
Yeah.
You need to put them in an institution.
Are we allowed to discuss what his disability is?
He's got cerebral palsy and cognitive disability.
Was that apparent that young?
Yeah, you're born with cerebral palsy, and you're born also with developmental disabilities typically.
Wow.
Which is the word for developmental disabilities back in the day was a mental retardation. It has since been called a cognitive disability. Essentially, it's an IQ level under a certain number.
Okay.
It's typically 60 or 55.
Okay.
Where you're pretty profoundly have impaired to be able to help yourself and be independent in your living.
Yeah.
And then people that have lived there obviously for 40 or 60 years, that's an impairment right then in itself,
Yeah.
right, to be in an institution. So anyway, there's 200, and I think there's 260 people currently living in Austin's institution.
Yeah.
And our sites were kind of looking that way. When Donald came into our community, we began to pay attention to what's happening over at the State Supported Living Center, and just recognizing the quality of life that the individuals were living over there wasn't great. The school was, the facility was experiencing a lot of transition and turnover in staff and that sort of thing.
Funding's up and down.
Well, their funding is amazing. It's $64 million a year across the state, and it's basically each individual's allocation of funding. What it boils down to, if you do the math, is $17,000 a month per person. So there's $64 million in the state being spent in 13 institutions, and there's only 1,300 people that live in them total in this state.
Wow.
And so it's a lot of money. But not a lot of quality of care happening, and then there's these people that are just treasures that nobody recognizes really what a treasure they are. And when people like that are grouped with a lot of other people with behavior issues and different things like that, and it's really, the state institutions in Texas have become the end of the road, where you're a ward of the state oftentimes, or the family literally, you've either been there so long and the family's not willing to look at what's happening now in the community. They're so afraid of it, or they just they feel like they're powerless and there's no choices.
Wow.
And so what Imagine Art is doing is we're beginning a conversation with people at the state level and the city level about the State Supported Living Center. And what we would love to see happen is we would love to work and partner with city Cultural Arts Division, the Economic Growth Division, the City Council and the Arts District, and partner with the state of Texas through DADS, Disability Division, and repurpose the facility. So it's 100 acres. We would love to repurpose it and see it created as an arts district, where the city of Austin would literally district that 100 acres as an arts place.
Right.
On the map. It's 100
That's a farm.
Acres. It's amazing.
That's a giant
And there's
amount of
about
space.
40 buildings on the property. They're built in the 30s. They're gorgeous. They're
Wow.
red brick buildings covered in windows. Many of them are not used. There's no elevators, and so it's not accessible. There's a 100-seat theater over there.
Wow.
There's studios over there. It's amazing. And so to repurpose it and invite in nonprofits, artists, live work, housing. A lot of the buildings are already set up for housing because they were dormitory. And so it would be so simple to create live studio housing that's, little studio efficiencies and things like that.
Wow.
And so that's what we're promoting. We're promoting it on a legislative level with the 84th legislator that's in session right now.
Okay.
And with the city, as well as state officials that work at DADS.
Okay.
And then just
Is
trying
that
to...
related to DARS? Department of Society?
DARS is under DAD, so it's Health and Human Services, and then DADS is under that, and then DARS is in there. So
Okay.
DADS and DARS are DARS is under DADS.
All right.
And I think they're trying, in the 84th legislation this year, they're trying to consolidate a lot of that stuff
Yeah.
to get rid of some overhead admin. But
Sure.
but anyway, that's, it's
So
sort
vote,
of a
vote
long
for Hillary
shot.
in
Yeah.
2016.
But we're thinking that Austin's a really creative, innovative place to do something like that, repurpose an institution for the arts
Yeah.
and for the nonprofits. Artists are being forced out of the city or forced out of their spaces and their
Yeah.
housing because they can't afford to live here anymore.
Yeah.
And the same with nonprofits. Nonprofits can barely afford to function in the city because the space is so high for
Yeah.
rentals, commercial rental. And so creating a landmark destination in Austin that is going to attract people in the arts and provide affordable live-work housing and commercial space for artists and organizations, as well as offer, the Starbucks and the sandwich shop and all of that, Thundercloud.
Snap Kitchen.
Yeah, Snap Kitchen. And then creating a place where the state facility can still operate and serve that small group of people that may still need emergency housing or transition housing. And you can still offer other types of transition housing there, like foster care or group home housing or supported housing, where you're bringing in attendant care to help people function independently. And so anyway, we're talking about, we have a website for that as well. It's Repurpose, ASSLC, Austin State Supported Living Center. So we've created a website for it. And
What's the website?
Repurpose, ASSLC,
.com
Austin,
or something?
yeah, .com.
Okay.
Austin State Supported Living Center, yeah, ASSLC.
Okay.
So, yeah,
That's-
the Sunset Commission recommended closure for
Mm-hmm.
the facility in 2017, and so that's what's happening in the 84th legislature right now, is they're deciding if they're going to close a facility in 2017.
Oh.
It's very possible that the whole conversation will be tabled because there's a lot of disagreement. There's lawsuits been filed already.
Oh, really?
So there's a lot of, there's a lot of different stakeholders that are freaking out about their own opinion about what they want to see happen.
Yeah.
And so probably the bill will die, chances are, and then that'll give us another 2 years to really maybe get to the table and talk to people.
And the timing could be perfect.
That's when our lease is up.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And you guys are in this spot where it's
Yeah.
like there's a train. Was it a light rail stop that's like right there?
Yeah.
And they're building that whole area up.
And I think the light rail's coming to Mopac too, isn't it? Isn't there a rail or some kind of a train?
They need options.
Coming over there.
They do. I don't know, but that would be great. But yeah, imagineart.net, reneweast.com. I mean, that's a million things you're dreaming like bigger than I can't hear 100 acres and think about how. But what you're doing is, like I said, very unique in Austin. It's very amazing. I encourage everyone to go check it out. 2830 Real Street or Real Street or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
What's the zip code?
78722.
And just check it out. Go down there and see what's happening. And is there anything else you wanted to add? Or, well, you're awesome. We love you. We love
Thank you.
what you're doing for Austin. We can't thank you enough.
Awesome.
So I am going to be all the artists in Austin and just say thank you. Even if the artists don't know who you are, what you're doing is incredibly helpful for people with disabilities, for people that don't have this, for artists, for the city. It's just, and we should be celebrating people like you more all the time with flags and
thank
signs.
You. Well, for the staff of Imagine Art and the board, I just received that. Thank you.
And we're going to name a street after you. We're going to have a big party. But anyway,
Just
Debbie.
build me a house there, and that's good. We'll be good.
A little house. You can't have a house, just a street name. So, Debbie Kizer, thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Carl.
Is there anything you wanted to add?
No,
All right. Well, high five.
thanks.
See you all later.
Hey everybody, this is Carl Smith. I'm taping a quick outro for the Fresh Goose podcast with Debbie Kizer. Repurpose ASSLC.com. Check that out. Imagineart.net and reneweast.com. If you are in Austin and you're an artist, and if you're an artist with disability, check it out. But I think everyone would be interested in what they're doing. It's a huge asset to our community of Austin, and Debbie is a tireless advocate for helping people. So, That's good. That's super good. So I wanted to thank you all for listening, and I want to thank canvasland.net, and I will see you all at the next podcast. Bye.